Hello, and welcome to Every Moment is a Choice. I'm your host, Erica Behel, and I invite you to join me on a transformative journey to uncover the extraordinary potential that lies within every single moment of our lives. From the choices we make in our relationships, careers, and personal growth, to the mindset we embrace in the face of adversity, this podcast will empower you to embrace the notion that every moment holds a choice, and it's up to us to seize it. Join me as we engage in insightful conversations with thought leaders, experts, and everyday people who have harnessed the power of choice to achieve greatness, overcome obstacles, and create extraordinary lives. If you feel inspired by this episode, please rate it and consider subscribing. I'm keen to know how it's impacted you. Today, I am thrilled to have Will Skinner on the podcast. Hi, Will.
Hi there. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So for listeners out there, Will is the CEO of UFIT Health, Fitness and Sports, Singapore's leading integrated health and fitness company. Driven by a belief that everyone has greatness within them, Will has transformed UFIT into a holistic health enterprise that focuses on helping individual clients achieve their goals. Whether it's elite sports conditioning, recovering from an injury, a weight loss objective, or simply learning to lift weights for the first time. This personalized approach has won UFIT a dedicated client base and several awards over the years. But Will's career has not always been in the fitness industry. In fact, for those who follow English rugby union, his name may already be familiar. So Will's professional rugby career started at the tender age of 18. He represented England in under 18 and under 21 sides, and later played for the Leicester Tigers and the Harlequins. He represented England for several years and even led the Saxons to victory in the 2008 Churchill Cup. However, a severe injury cut short his career on the pitch, and this life-changing event forced him to rethink and pivot his career. We'll explore his story of overcoming devastating injury and how his background in professional sports influences the way he runs his business today. And before we get started, I myself have been a UFIT client for 4 years, which is how I came to know Will. And UFIT has helped me evolve from a recovering breast cancer patient who had never even lifted a dumbbell in her life, seriously, to a fit and strong 46-year-old who can lift heavy weights. So I can deadlift a bit and keep up with my 2 boys. So I'm really keen to get Will's perspective on igniting greatness through health and fitness. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much, Erica. Well, I was going down memory lane with a few of those bits there. I forget what I've done sometimes, but it's, nice to be reminded.
Awesome. So, Will, you've taken a relatively unique approach to your health and fitness business. So tell us about the overall philosophy.
As you said, you described it better than I ever could to a certain degree within that introduction. We have shifted towards holistic health and fitness. It's always a tricky one. Using the word holistic, I think it's probably a little bit of a cliche and potentially overused. In essence, your health is everything that you do. It's, without your health, you have nothing to a certain degree. And so we are conscious that people are addressing their lifestyle in all sorts of ways, and we can't solve everything, but your health is something that ideally we should be thinking about every hour of the day, but also conscious that it's actually just not possible to be able to do that as well. So our approach is, how can we help ultimately clients get the best results that they possibly can, ultimately get the most out of themselves, the best version of themselves, all of the different marketing cliches that everybody sees on Instagram or wherever it is. But how can we create that sense of pride within themselves? And that's not just around the aesthetic element that usually associates with health and fitness companies, but around their sense of purpose and achieving things that they've never achieved and seeing what's possible. And we know the best chance of doing that is to focus on multiple facets of their life. And one of those is exercise, and it's probably one of the most tangible when it comes to health and fitness. But other bits are in and around how you're sleeping, what you are eating, how you're interacting with people, what your social connections are like. Obviously, we're not with our clients every hour of the day, but we look to help and support where we possibly can and create an environment where our clients are comfortable and they're able to ask as I often do, because I'm the least qualified person within our business from a health and fitness perspective. So I ask ourselves, very stupid questions, but ones that people want to know and want to learn about. And so for me, it's about creating that safe environment that we can offer the opportunity for our clients to ignite their greatness or get the very most out of themselves.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, having been a client, it's not your typical gym. It's not just a place to have a personal trainer, count your reps and help you lift weights and learn proper technique. It is much more than that. You mentioned igniting greatness, and I've seen that on the wall of UFIT facilities as well. What does greatness mean to you?
Really good question, because obviously when we were debating our guiding statements, our purpose, our mission, our vision, the word greatness was hotly debated because it can be seen as slightly elitist. And I think I would agree when it's attributed to the masses, when you talk about it from a global perspective. But we are a super personalized brand, the way that we work with our clients. We're super focused. And so the element of greatness comes down to the individual. And as I said, it's about, for me, it's about evoking that sense of pride within that individual and, getting the very most out of an individual, making them realize what's possible. And that can be the smallest level of change. It doesn't have to be creating the next Novak Djokovic. It can be about sleeping a little bit better, actually making change in their life that they've never even thought was possible previously, and us making them realize what the possibilities are and taking them from that one little small win to potentially a bigger win a few weeks down the line, and then maintaining that journey. Because igniting a small amount of greatness, or whatever that looks like, it's one step. It's never ending to a certain degree. It's not as if we're going to go, right, we've ignited your greatness.
You're
See
great.
you later. Yeah, you're great. If anything, you're great. And this is probably where the elite element does come in. The greats are people that do sustain that level of pride and that success from a global platform. And so from our standpoint, we want to work with people and make people realize what's possible for the long term and have that continual improvement mindset.
Yeah.
It is often associated again with professional and an elite level sport. Why does it have to be about huge, enormous things? It can be the small things that are actually really, really quite important to everyday life.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important, that in order for people to commit to something, it has to be about them, right? It has to be about their goals. And I remember joining UFIT, the first encounter I had with someone, I can't remember who it was because it was around 4 years ago, but they had a phone call with me and they just said, what's going on with you? Let us know, kind of tell me about yourself. What are you trying to achieve? And I think that is the best way to get someone commit to something. Like you said, yours is a personalized service, to understand what motivates them. My version of great is different than somebody else's version of great. And I think that it's amazing you've built a business around this. You had mentioned a couple things on, sleeping and eating. For UFIT specifically, what are the different elements that you provide? I mean, I know you have nutritionists, but kind of what is within your sphere of influence at UFIT?
Yeah, again, very important question to us as a company. When I took over as CEO for UFIT, still today we're getting better, but I found it almost tricky to answer my friends in the UK that said, you're working for UFIT now and really well done. It looks great on the website, but what exactly do you do? And I'd be there almost from a shopping list basis, just listing off individual skills of each one of our staff. Physiotherapy, dry needling, personal training, tennis coaching, etc., but not being able to communicate us in a concise and effective way. And I think that impacted us as a brand. And so really needed to hone down and to a certain degree say no to some things so that we became known for being specialists in a certain area. And ultimately, we offer integrated health and fitness solutions for people, as you say, trying to strive to achieve their own goals. When it comes to holistic health, do we have everything under our umbrella that is necessary to maintain someone's health or optimal health? No, but in the areas that we do, we're super focused, and we have a strength of community and a strength of almost self-confidence that we're able to refer out to individuals, whether on the mental health side, for example, or the physician side, that we don't have under our umbrella, but we're not afraid that we're going to lose clients by sending people out to that, because our methodology and our ethos is we're here to ignite the greatness of our clients. And if it means that actually sending them out to see someone to enable us to do that and sustain that, then of course we're going to do it. This is their life that we're dealing with here. Why would we ever not look to do that with those things in the balance? And so from a very simplistic standpoint, we have 4 sort of verticals to our business. Our health vertical, which is our nutritional services, our physiotherapy services, and our health and performance services. Our fitness, which is one-on-one and group strength and conditioning fitness, and our sports, which is predominantly tennis coaching, and we run group and personalised tennis coaching in and around the island. There was an acquisition that we did 3 years ago now, and has worked incredibly well. And sport has been part of our lifeblood since day one, before I came to UFIT, and it's a great way of engaging people and introducing people into the UFIT community, and inevitably they find out about personal training or get injured and need to see a physiotherapist. And equally, it's a great way of connecting and meeting people, which is a big part of us. And then corporate health and wellness as well. So we have some great partners we look after LinkedIn's health and wellness across APAC and UBS. We have a 6,000 square foot gym there, for example. And it is essentially our health, fitness and sports programs wrapped into a corporate model that is slightly more scalable, and an approach that works for that clientele. From a product standpoint, I think the thing that represents us best is our circle of care and the changes that we've made to our sort of traditional personal training service that we had been running for 10 years. And our circle of care is essentially an ecosystem that our one-on-one clients come into, that gives them, and in our eyes, hopefully, a very smooth client experience, and it gives them access to a team of health and fitness specialists that work together and work collaboratively in looking to achieve those clients' goals. And so everyone from physiotherapists to exercise physiologists to nutritionists to personal trainers, all working towards what that client goal is, with no additional spend, a smooth customer experience, all under the same roof, for example. So as I said, it just increases our chances of being able to ignite their greatness or achieve their goals. Great.
I love to hear that, because I think that what you're talking about, the client, the overall client experience, when it comes to health, we traditionally think in terms of, doctor and patient, and the actual root of patient, the word patient, is one who suffers. And we don't want to focus fully on people who are suffering, right? We want people to enable themselves to take charge of their own kind of long-term health. And I think that what you're saying about the client experience really plays into that, because I come from a customer success background, and we know from a customer perspective that every different touch point builds up their experience, right? And builds up their loyalty and how highly they think of your brand and everything. And patients are becoming more like consumers across the healthcare, industry, that we all know this. So when you're dealing with people who are making lifestyle modifications, really investing in themselves to better their long-term health, you want to deliver a great kind of consumer experience for them too. I think that's so important. And when you talked about the existence of community, and I think that's there's the personalized focus on their goals, but also becoming part of a community. And I think those things are, from my experience at UFIT at least, is really important, because you will walk around the UFIT gym or one of the classes, And you usually see people of all shapes and sizes. You know, one guy might be working on recovering from an ankle injury. One person might be coming in there for weight loss. Somebody else is coming in there for a different reason. But you're all kind of working out together. You know, there's not an exclusive feeling. There's a very inclusive feeling to UFIT, which I think is important. And how else do you build up that sense of community within UFIT? You talked about your programs, but how else do you build that?
I mean, I'm biased. I have only ever been involved in teams, if I'm perfectly honest, and from the world of sport, and trying to bring some of the very best elements of team and collaboration and celebration through to the environment. And it is a tricky dynamic because, you know, our clients and the expectations are that we have that bespoke one-on-one focus and that client experience. And there's a very big reason that a lot of our clients don't come in and choose group sessions, for example. But then that is sitting alongside the additional benefits we know that come through collaboration and that sense of team. And so for our one-on-one clients that are within the circle of care, that sort of introduction of team comes through the interaction that client gets working with many professionals within their sort of bespoke service, and them seeing that people are working together to focus on them, which is enormously exciting. You know, and we need to be better at it, but it's phenomenal. You know, you're making people you're introducing an approach that usually is only reserved for the people like Novak Djokovic with their entourage of 10 different people looking after them. But we've built out a structure whereby that's really possible now and affordable. Obviously not affordable for everyone, but affordable and is smooth. And when you are stepping into the gym and you're seeing your guide, your personal trainer, and they say, "Oh, I see you saw Nick upstairs about your ankle instability last week. How is it feeling? I've reduced our lower leg weights today because you might be experiencing some pain on that." That's such a unique experience. One, because we've adjusted the programming and the intervention as a result, but also just making the client aware that they're special, right? And having that sort of those chemicals in your body flushing through as a result of that focus and on how it makes you feel is something that makes us unique, and is something that your average PT or professional that is working in isolation, your freelancer, doesn't have that availability to access. Yeah. And that's our differentiator. We've had to make some big steps and take a really long, hard look at ourselves over the last year as to what is it that makes us different? What are the things that are at our fingertips that actually we weren't using well enough to make that client experience that much better? And it seems so obvious now, but we weren't doing it for as well as we could have been doing for a number of years. But now we put some big steps in play to make sure that we make that client experience world-class, absolutely world-class, and a really client-focused approach, which is, really starting to come through, which is very exciting.
That's awesome. And was there something that triggered that hard look at yourselves? I mean, ultimately, you're a business, right? And you want to make money, and you want to do that in a sustainable way. So was it something with the business that triggered that shift towards maybe we should focus more on the client experience?
Yes. Yeah. If I'm honest, the whole industry have been put through the mill over the last 5 years with 4 years with COVID.
Yeah.
And we've gone on a huge journey as well. And I have personally, in terms of my experience and learning about business and working with people. But we back in, 2019, this was pre-COVID, we did a little bit of a brand restructure, and we set up our integrated health and fitness hubs. And we moved everybody, our 3 sites within the CBD of Singapore, for example, which was a physiotherapy clinic, a group training studio, and a personal training studio, all in under one roof. And we said, right, here's an integrated health and fitness hub. We're going to nail it, and almost just chuck people under one roof, and thought, right, they're going to be integrated, they're going to be working together, and this makes us different. And it did make us different. You know, that there was no one else doing it. And it was, 4 years ago now. And then after spending a decent amount of money fitting out Club Street, which is a really unique place, 5 shop houses in the middle of Singapore CBD, which definitely wasn't cheap, and the rent's not cheap. We then had COVID, and it was a worrying time. If I'd known then that the government support was going to come through as much as it did, and also the environment that after 6 months everybody was then locked in Singapore, and the gyms were open and had nothing else to do other than go to expensive restaurants or come and do fitness or personal training or physiotherapy, then I probably wouldn't have been so worried. But at the time, it was an enormously worrying period. And when we weren't able to see clients, the vast majority of our physiotherapists and personal trainers only earn money if they're seeing clients. And that was worrying for me. I had 100 people's livelihoods on the line. And a number of those aren't from Singapore and don't have family members that they can move into and share costs and save costs, etc. So I was confident that at some point we were going to open back up, but I had to make sure that I had a team ready and able to go when the doors opened back up. And so I had to look after the guys as best as possible and give them the ability to earn money where they could. And so I had to loosen our brand a little bit and go, right, get online, do what you can, see clients of the revenue that they were earning, give them a far higher percentage of it than what we had traditionally done, because it was a need to sustain and to keep a team. I needed to. We had some other securing factors that helped us during that period, our corporate contracts with the likes of LinkedIn and UBS, the fact that we'd been able to restructure there and also really grow our health side, our physiotherapy side, was enormously beneficial. And also we had invested into on our online options almost pre-COVID as well, which again helped us drive admittedly smaller levels of revenue, but we're able to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Which was very exciting. Well, it helped us. It helped us. And then, as I said, we then entered into a period where a false economy to a certain degree. Everybody was locked in Singapore and was doing a lot of health and fitness and spending time on themselves, or doing an unbelievable amount of running or cycling that they hadn't done for 24 years. And they were getting injured and going in and seeing our physios. And so we had, for an 8-month period, we were the busiest we'd ever been.
Wow.
And I was probably sitting there tapping myself on the back going, we've nailed it. Look at us. We're integrated. We're working well. The team are loving it. Well done us. And as I said, it was a little bit of a false economy. It gave me a false sense of security, and I'd taken my eye off why are we here, what is it that makes us different, and I ultimately hadn't focused enough on that client experience. And so then when normality resumed, there was a wave of competitors that had popped up during that period, especially within the CBD. Mm-hmm. Freelance personal trainers or personal training gyms. Personal training gyms, we now have 15 new PT gyms within a 1 kilometre radius of our Club Street site. It's bonkers.
Wow.
And so, we were getting squeezed, really squeezed in terms of new clients in. We had a certain loss of trainers as well as they looked to go out and start their own ventures, etc. And where our health lines and our corporate and our sports were doing very well, fitness was getting squeezed.
Wow.
And so I said, right, what are we doing here? What is it that we're trying to achieve? And went right back to our brand statements and right back to the reason that we set up initially, and where we wanted to take this business, and said, right, we've taken our eye off the ball, and we need to come back to the client journey and our client-centric approach and make some big changes. But ultimately, every single decision we make has to come down to our vision, our mission, our purpose, and the ability to ignite greatness, and our mission of creating that integrated community for people striving to achieve their goals. Yeah. And that's where, from a product standpoint, we moved away from that traditional PT model of selling a 50-pack and then a client extending it for 18 months, and then at the end of the 18 months, them going, don't feel or look any different. I'm not going to rebuy. And understandably, them going, well, you haven't worked for me, because we hadn't created that environment of, accountability, we have collaboration, of results. We hadn't put that in place. The client experience was not good enough. And so, that's when the idea of the philosophy of putting client absolutely front center of every single decision that we are making. And as a result, we focus back on what makes us different, access to team, and that's where the circle of care was born, and everything that comes with that. But obviously the biggest element is client is number one.
I love it's music to my ears. So have you been able to, is it too early to see any results from that, from, how your clients are achieving their success, or, just staying with UFIT longer, or is there any kind of measurable impact of that, or is it just too soon?
We are 4.5 months in with the approach. That there's, without getting too much into the detail of it, but there are some really positive signs. If I'm honest, the most positive sign at the moment is for the previous 5 years, on average, we were churning 1.78 trainers per month. We were losing, and from a team of 45 to 50 on average PTs, that's a lot of people leaving the business every year. And so inevitably, that's a lot of clients leaving as well. And clients are expensive to acquire. And so, that was really hurting us. I think we're a little bit too early to draw too many conclusions from this. But in the first 4.5 months, we've only lost one.
That's fantastic.
And that's and that's not to a competitor either. It's it was actually a manager that's moved back into recruitment. So it's again probably too early to draw too many conclusions. I relate a lot of it to sport, and when I've had new managers come in and you have a certain amount of success for 6 months because you're surfing that wave of excitement and new ideas, but as I keep saying to the management team now and to everyone, we've got to keep this energy up, and we get that energy through seeing results, and again putting our clients front and center, and celebrating that greatness, and making us go, actually, this is why we're here. I'm loving seeing the change in this, or loving working in this environment. I really enjoy and value the interactions that I get with the other physiotherapists and the skill set that we have within our team. That's enormous. Because, per session, and if you still look at the approach of paying, if a trainer goes, for that 1 hour I see my client, I'm only getting 60 cents in the dollar, and if I work for them, I'm getting 75 cents in the dollar. We can't match on that one aspect. But as we know, the job satisfaction and isn't just about that one area. It's a big consideration, and something that we have adjusted, and we reward in a different way, and it's a multifaceted element of how we look to create that environment for clients and also team members.
I think you've hit on such an important point, because if you have an unmotivated team, how are you going to deliver a great client experience? You can't. It's impossible, right? So it really starts with the internal culture, and you're motivating your team. And like you said, it's not always money, right? It's not always about earning the most money. And there are so many people who are working with either patients or in the wellness industry. Everybody's burned out. It feels like post-COVID, everybody has a degree of burnout going on. And for us to deliver great client experience, great patient experience, you need to focus on your team first, right? And I love that you're doing that. And I love that the measure you gave was the churn of your employees, the positive signs of that, because obviously they see a benefit to the new program as well.
You're absolutely right. What is most exciting is the biggest motivator for our team has been our approach to focus on clients. Ultimately, and that's where I'm going, it sort of shivers up my spine. that's the most exciting element. That's why they got into the industry. They didn't get into it because they think they could earn more money doing this than they could being X. It's because they coach and they have a huge level of empathy for people, and they enjoy it. And so it's been amazing seeing that and seeing the response. And ironically, we're getting the results in terms of numbers and financials that we had been striving to achieve, but just by that approach of just looking at spreadsheets and doing sales and XYZ for however many years, now going, well, actually, we're just focusing on people and our clients. The benefits of doing that, the financials are just a byproduct of good service and doing what we should have always been doing.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's turn to you, Will, personally, and your background, because I think that there's an interesting story around, where you developed this sense of, like you said, you've been part of a team most of your life and everything. So take us back a little bit. What were you like as a kid, and what led you to rugby?
Probably should speak to my parents, but I ask them this occasionally as well. I was bonkers. Not clinically, I never got sectioned or anything, but just an unbelievable amount of energy. And my dad was a GP, and he said he used to have patients come in and say, my child is uncontrollable. And he said, well, do you want to swap? And always have that sort of approach. But I've got two older brothers, and so inevitably was always in their shadow, and would try and get out of their shadow by doing sport or doing something ridiculous. And I had an unbelievable upbringing, if I'm perfectly honest. Parents still live in the same house that they're in now, old farm, had everything from sheep to cows to guinea fowl to chickens to rabbits to whatever it was, and very privileged in that sense, and also was able to find sport, and not necessarily just rugby. Obviously rugby was a big part of it, but sport in general was as a way of releasing some of that energy and getting the very most out of life, and loved it. Loved every single sort of ball possible, and moving, and the physical element was something that I, to a certain degree, genetically, not height-wise, but physically, was lucky enough to probably inherit from my mum, not my dad. And loved it, and had an amazing upbringing, great school that I was able to progress within, and a great group of friends. And for whatever reason, were able to have a mindset of focus and resilience to get me through periods. Yeah, and then being able to get me sitting here where I am today.
Like, nice. So you became a rugby player quite early on, before you were 18.
But yeah. I mean,
so how did that all happen?
I think I picked up a rugby ball when I was 5. The local rugby club, Only, if any of your listeners are sort of from North Buckinghamshire in the UK, which is about 50 miles north of London. Yeah, it starts at under 6 or under 7, but I was so keen, and obviously my two brothers were in the older age groups, going down there every Sunday in usually what is very wet, very cold conditions, but it didn't deter me, and picking up a rugby ball and the physical elements I absolutely loved. And showed some promise. I think in my first year I got most improved because I was starting from a very, very low level. And then, strangely, if I'm perfectly honest, I mean, this sounds awfully arrogant, but I was considered very good from an early age. And why I say that is it's quite rare. And not saying that rarity is a good thing in any sense. It's more that saying to kids that aren't selected in first teams that actually the majority of people that I played professional rugby with were in second, third teams, all the way up till under 16, under 17, under 18. And even, people not even being recognised as half-decent sportsmen at university then make it into professional and international stage. I remember playing England under 16s. And we were in a training camp, and the head coach said, right, there are 45 of you in this room. On average, 2 of you will become professionals. And we all laughed and went, nah, we're making it. We're all making it. And literally, two of us.
Yeah.
Two of us are a group of 45 guys who were elite level at the age of under 16. So we had done the majority of our growing and development physically from that perspective. And for whatever reason, the other 43 fell by the wayside and didn't become professional sports people, and others came through. And so, yeah, so I was a little bit strange from that level. I had, was doing all sorts of sport. Rugby was the one that ticked the box the most for me, probably because I've got a horrible amount of energy and I'm an aggressive little man, probably just small man syndrome. And the element of people saying you're too small to play rugby definitely spurred me on a little bit. And the element of proving people wrong is definitely one of my motivations now. And rugby was a phenomenal outlet for me. And it is, taught me some very, very strong values and things that I literally embed into one, how we pay people now. We have a loyalty bonus.
Yeah.
Loyalty for me, which rugby has taught me, is probably the one value I value the most. And I like to reward people on that. And I would like to think that I'm loyal to others as well.
Yeah. So what else have you learned in terms of leadership on the pitch? Leadership in a team sports setting that carries over into your leadership today, running a business. You talked about loyalty. Are there any other lessons you learned?
It's a very obvious one, especially within sport and a team dynamic. And it's a little bit of a cliche, but cliches are only cliches because they're true more often than not. But leading by example, for me, whilst I was playing sport, that was probably what I was best at. Not necessarily because I was any good, and compared to my peers when I was playing, I definitely wasn't in some periods. But I would, to a certain degree, do things probably stupidly with my body that would inspire people to a certain degree and put my head in silly places or on the rugby pitch, or commit myself and work in a way that was good enough and for other people to follow. And so taking that aspect through to any aspect of my life now, not necessarily just at work, but my kids. I've got 3 kids now, and I've got to set a good example for them. And so leading by example is very, very important. Other aspects, again, a little bit of a cliche, but authenticity is and also vulnerability that comes alongside that is very, very important. I think when I initially took on my first sort of big senior leadership role, I was young. I was 24 at the time, and I became captain of Harlequins, which is one of the biggest Premiership clubs in the UK. And I was youngest ever captain of a Premiership team. And I had the experience of working under some unbelievable leaders. At Leicester Tigers, for example, my first ever captain there was a guy called Martin Johnson, and he was the World Cup winning captain for England in 2003. So, and I was probably guilty when I originally took over. I was going, whoa, what would Jono do in this scenario? And I was, came to the, and I would always ask myself that. But I'm there going, I have no idea what Jono would do. No idea. So don't even pretend, and I'm definitely not him. And so, but what would I do? And, and I'd been given that position of responsibility. And so people saw that I had the decision-making skills or the way of working or that influence within the team, that they trusted me in that regard. So actually what I would do in that position and be confident enough to move forward with that. But at the same time, be sort of collaborative enough and fair enough to people around you that we're doing it in the right way. And so, when I say authentic, being myself. And then probably what I've learned most whilst working, especially over the last 4 years, is that level of vulnerability as well, and showing people that you're human and relatable, and we're going through this together. And actually, occasionally, I need some support as well as supporting others is a big part of leadership, I think. And especially, leadership, definitely from a sporting perspective. I see I see it has really evolved over the last few years, and how people work with others and expectations and what are the important aspects of being a leader. The traditional, psychopathic alpha male type leader that is, you would typically or historically label someone with, or a good leader with, now doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Doesn't fit. Your Alex Ferguson type.
Yeah.
A phenomenal leader.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. But in today's society, that does not work.
Wow.
Does not work. But then saying that, Elon Musk's doing all right. so who knows? But it is leadership's an evolution, right? And as with every business, you've got to adapt, and you've got to see and feel how people are working and what they're responding best to. And so, an aspect of leadership is around being adaptable and malleable to the people that you are working with.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated by this, and especially because I know most people who will have known you from your rugby days will know that you suffered an injury which effectively ended your career, and a career that was on a great trajectory at the time, and probably not something you anticipated. And so looking back in hindsight now, we can see it's all worked out for the best. You now have a great career with UFIT and everything, but at the time, how were you able to deal with that? Something so catastrophic almost occurring.
It was tough. I'd had a number of near misses, significant injuries during my career. I mean, I've had 11 different reconstructive operations on various bits of my body during my 11 years of professional rugby. And so from when I was 18 and I was in the academy first year at Leicester Tigers, for example, being told that I needed a back operation, and the person within the club who had it 6 months previous to me was then bedbound for 6 months, and going, oh my gosh, right, you got to get through this. But you, for whatever reason, and the element of resilience and mental health that is very prominent today was non-existent back then. You just, buckle up and get on with it.
Yeah.
And to a certain degree, I did, and stayed focused, and we had a good network in and around me. Obviously, my dad being a doctor, for one, helped me in that regard, and a great infrastructure at Leicester Tigers. They were the top guys within the Premiership, and so had a good support network there. And then a whole load of injuries during my career, and ways of going, right, get knocked down, rehab, back up again, operation, recovery. And so then when I injured my neck in the match that I did, it was a tricky one, because it wasn't it was a one-off incident, and I knew it was a bad injury, but it wasn't at that time something that I thought, right, career's done. And so it sort of gradually snuck up on me. I did 3 months of rehabilitation, hoping that I would avoid an operation. At the end of, towards the end of that 3 months, then realised, I need to, if I'm going to sort this out long term, not necessarily just for playing rugby, I needed to have this operation. So I had a full disc replacement with my neck, and then after the operation, it was a lot better. But then probably, even a few weeks after the operation, I just started to go, hang on a sec, I've still got a few years left on this existing contract. I was 28 at the time and wanted to carry on playing, but then thought, is this what's best? And so I did another, year's worth of rehabilitation. But during that time, knowing pretty much that I was going to call it a day and announce to friends and family that I was retiring from rugby. My wife hates it when I say retiring, because it means that I'm never ever working again. But I love calling it retiring. And so during that period, the club were able to give me experiences in other areas. I'd done my degree whilst I was playing, so I did a Open University degree whilst I was playing in business, which gave me a little bit of a base, if anything. It enabled me to get an EP in Singapore that much easier because I then had a degree, which was good. But it gave me a sort of general understanding and some academia behind business and looking at balance sheets and accountancy, etc. And to sit alongside my softer skills of leadership and working with people. Yeah, and then I called it a day, which was tough. I'd done a certain amount of work experience during that year worth of rehab. The majority of that work experience was within the city of London. You know, if I'm perfectly honest, you know, rugby is still a relatively middle-class sport in the UK, and Harlequins, the club that I was at, is definitely in that realm as well. And so the normal trajectory of an individual that's had a decent career at Quins is like, right, he's a good lad, you now go into the city and go into insurance or go into banking or whatever it is. And I did a certain amount of that, you know, a few times a week, going into the city, jumping on the commute. And after sort of 9 months of doing that, I realised I don't want to do this. This isn't me. And so if anything, it taught me that I didn't want to go into the city. So luckily for me, I had career-ending insurance, which gave me the financial security to keep my options open. And then at the same time, the club said, right, we actually want you to come and work here, but on the commercial side, so the office side. And I actually went, I don't know, but I said yes. But I said, I don't want you to pay me, because otherwise I would have felt obliged probably, and it would have probably be more formal in that sense. So I said, look, I'm going to test this out for 5-6 months. And my wife at that point, we knew that we wanted to have a sort of extended break whilst playing rugby, the ability to go travelling properly and do everything like that. So I said, right, for the next 6 months I'll come and work, and whilst I find my feet and see what it's like to work in a normal working environment, working with females for one, which I had never done. Like, it's bonkers, right? And learn how to pick up a phone and answer emails and come into an office and put a pair of chinos rather than a pair of rugby shorts on every day, which was very strange, and learnt an unbelievable amount. And then afterwards said, yeah, actually this has been really good for me. And they were able to see my sort of skill set and my leadership elements and the ability to pick stuff up. And so after that, I then, after going on holiday for a while, for a few months, I then came back and became head of sales for the club. And was able to cut my teeth and learn a little bit more and to a certain degree enable me to transition out of rugby and move away from the guy that used to play a bit of rugby and is now got a job because he used to play a bit of rugby, to now actually, you know, coming in and I've got some focus and not probably was seen as the guy that used to play a bit of rugby because I was at the same club, but actually offering value other than the fact I used to be captain for the club, etc. But it was a tricky period. You know, it's one sort of anecdote that I tell, but it was when I was it was probably it was a year after I retired, and every year the ground that we traditionally play at holds like 15,000 people and would be sold out every time, but once a year, excluding finals or cup competitions that we would get through to, once a year we would have a big Christmas game at Twickenham, which is the national stadium, in front of 80,000 people. And I'm fortunate enough to captain and lead the guys out in a number of competitions. And the year previous, I'd led the guys out and was playing in front of 80,000 people. And it's an experience that you can never replicate in any sense of life. And so did that. Then I got my injury. Then I retired. And so it was sort of 18 months after leading the guys out. I was then in the back office team going, right, we're prepping for this and we're selling tickets and we're going out. And on the morning of the match, I was in and alongside all of the back office team supporting the players. And part of that support is we put 40,000 flags out on every other seat in the stadium. And I'm like, let's do it. Because you're part of the machine, right? You're a tiny, small little cog now, and even though, you used to captain the guys and lead people out in front of 80,000 people and people used to know your name, this is what you do now. And you got to swallow your pride, and you got to start from a few rungs down on the ladder and where you were, and you got to build. And you can't have any expectation of this is what I used to do, which was hard, because, people definitely don't pick up the phone to you as much as they once used to, and a lot of your identity vanishes almost overnight. And so you got to build back up and look to progress and develop and get enjoyment and satisfaction and happiness through other channels. And part of that is putting 40,000 flags out and go, I've done it. And so, it's a small little anecdote, but it was really, really quite important. Things like that, really important in my development and experience in the real world, I would say, because professional sport is definitely not the real world. And it was very good for me, very good for me. And so, and definitely pull on those little bits when we're in tricky situations like we have been over the last few years with COVID, etc.
Yeah. There are so many people who are going through transitions in their careers. I mean, this is across all industries. People have been post-COVID made redundant. We know lots of people in Singapore who have lost their jobs and had to leave. And you have to pick up again. You have to find a way to pick up again. And yours is probably an extreme example of that, right? But yeah.
I don't know if it is. With professional sport, just because we have a few thousand people turn up and watch us every week, why are we any more special with our transition than, my friends who are moving from banking into owning a restaurant? They've got mortgages and they've got families and they've got financial commitments, and they have the same stresses and strains, and probably not as close a network as what professional sports people have, i.e. that sense of team and those people who are around them.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of hype in and around, professional sports people transitioning. And when it comes to mental health, and, I've played with or against, gosh, I don't want to bring the mood of this down, but 5 people that have committed suicide.
Yeah.
Whilst they are playing professional sport. And everybody's going, God, what is it about professional sport? What is it about that environment that creates that? And I'm thinking, well, it's not just professional sport. Yeah. We're just more aware of it because of the profile of these guys. But it's life. Like, this is happening. So what can we do it in all aspects of life to prevent it? And then it comes back down to things like exercise and health and fitness and social networks and what you eat and how you sleep. And so it all comes full circle. And things are very important to me.
Definitely. And I think for everybody, those things that you just mentioned, exercise, eating well, sleeping, those are the things that will carry you through. If the rest of your kind of world is falling apart in terms of your career or something, the attention, the consistency to getting out to the gym, going for a run outside, not even going to a gym, that carries you through. And I have to say, I went through my own version of burnout for my corporate career. And maybe the one thing that I did consistently was come to work out twice a week at UFIT. And I'm not just saying that because you're here and sitting in front of me, but it's one of those things where if you can maintain one element of your life where you are disciplined and you are achieving progress, every week my trainer would say, oh, you're doing a little bit better this week or whatever. It was that one little shred of kind of consistency and progress that I felt in my life. And, obviously getting through something like burnout takes a lot more, takes therapy sometimes, like you said, it can have really big consequences for people. But yeah, that holistic element of focusing on something you can control. Mm-hmm. You can control your health to a certain extent. So that's so important for people working through burnout, working through huge changes in their lives. Mm-hmm. I think that's such an important lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the element of our sports psych guy, a South African guy that we worked with for years at Harlequins. control the controllables, boys. You know, when it used to come for game preparation or whatever, we couldn't control what the referee was going to do or what the weather was going to be like, but we could control how we prepared and everything, the steps that we put to prepare ourselves for that match, and the visualization and the moves and the environment with the changing room, etc. And so what we can keep consistent. So and that gives you a huge level of security whilst everything else is going on.
Yeah.
If we can keep those elements consistent, it has huge impacts just on your approach and your mental health.
Totally agree. So, you've dispensed a lot of great nuggets of insight for our listeners and for me. And I would ask you, knowing everything you know now from your whole trajectory of your career so far, what is one thing you wish everyone knew or appreciated about health and fitness?
It's the $1 million question, isn't it? There are so many small little things, but ultimately it comes down to what is that one vision, life-changing aspect, and again, I don't want to get too wishy-washy and performance or Simon Sinek based, but your why, that one go-to that's always going to keep you back on track. Because everybody falls off.
Yeah.
Everybody goes, oh gosh, I just can't be bothered anymore, right? But what's the one thing that's going to go and rebalance you and get you back on? And for me, now is my children. That is generally the only. It gets me super emotional saying that. I want them to be proud of their dad, right? And so elements, and so leading by example is massively important. So me working every day and being physically fit, and them being proud of me is the one thing that gets me back on track. And being the best version of myself for them. That centers me. So everybody needs that ability to recenter themselves, and then that broken down. So what does that look like for me? It's one, my physical appearance. They're going, "Daddy strong, boys," and I'm picking them up above my head, and so that again gets broken down into, right, I need to make sure I can shoulder press X with dumbbells because that's how heavy my kids are, right? Obviously, they're going to get heavier and heavier as it goes, so I haven't really thought about this. But, and so having that, I mean, at UFIT, we call it that life-changing goal. The thing that really centers people back and almost is never really achievable. It's always ongoing, so never really achievable, i.e. you're going, right, I've done it. See you later, I'm complete now. But something you can break down and compartmentalize and make a little bit more tangible. And so that is the most important thing, because it sits alongside the philosophy that health is always on, right? Without our health, we have nothing, right? And
absolutely.
Your health can't be fixed by one tablet, one injection, and equally it can't be fixed by one half-an-hour HIIT class either. And equally, it can't be ruined by one bad meal. And so, we all go through it and we all think, oh God, I've had this salad now and I look great. And equally, we all go, oh my God, I've had that burger and I feel really guilty. But it's taking that bigger picture and just going, look, this is a sustainable approach for me, and this is what I'm happy with, and this is where I'm feeling proud about myself at the moment, and I'm taking these little nuggets and I'm continually getting better. And let's take that approach forward and I'm making sure that I'm as healthy as I can possibly be.
Great. Absolutely. Health is wealth.
Yeah, exactly.
So where do you see UFIT going in the future? Say it's, 5 years from now, it's 2028. Where do you see UFIT?
I think probably 3 years ago I would have said, I want to be in X number of countries and I want to have this footprint and I want to be working with X number of clients. I still want to be working with X number of clients, but only because I am delivering a product that is good enough to be servicing that number of clients, if you know what I mean. Like, I want to have an approach that is ultimately the most successful approach of any health, fitness, preventative care operation, and it is the most client-centric. It will have to be the most client-centric to be able to achieve that.
Yeah.
And so, to a certain degree, even if that's one client and I'm only focused on that, and and it's just me, then great. But I am blessed with, I've got 100 plus, 120 people within the company, and 100 plus coaches, clinicians, trainers that have that philosophy, and so the ability to work with that number of clients. And at the moment, I'm focusing on those guys and the clients that they have.
Yeah.
So let's make sure they're right. Let's make sure this is under what we are currently have with our fingertips. Make sure we're doing that as best as we possibly can be, and we are delivering in what we say we're going to be delivering on Instagram or whatever marketing channel that we possibly put out there. And then as a result, it's meritocracy, right? If we're doing it, then people will follow, and we stay true to that. And then as a result, growth will happen. It will be a byproduct of it. But I need to make sure that still in 5 years' time, whoever we are working with is better than where we are today and as best as we possibly can be.
Yeah.
So I've got to keep that approach consistent and going through. And so that will be, there will be a whole load of development that comes with that.
Yeah.
We're not a franchise. We're not a cookie cutter approach. I say to the team, we've got unbelievable skill set and really varied set of skills within all of our guys, but different skills, same values. From our team, we're going to have a whole host of different skill sets and different competencies within the group, but keep those values front and center, and that's what we will always pin ourselves on.
The strong values, and I think you're using the control the controllable philosophy for making sure you deliver that. I think that's commendable. So last question, Will. It's been an amazing discussion, by the way. But I do like to ask my guests, what would you like your legacy to be? You've touched on your kids, which is I appreciate that as well. I love that. But what would you like to be remembered for?
To be honest, you mentioned it. I know it's not in and around the business, but it sort of is as a byproduct. But my children are, it's a very obvious piece of being my legacy, but all I care about is if I make them proud or not. And it like them saying, "Oh, my daddy's really strong. He's stronger than your daddy in the playground." Yeah, that spurs me on. As small as that sounds, that really does, and that spurs me on from a business perspective, from a health and fitness perspective. That's what drives me, and I've got to create the very best environment for my children. And so part of that is the financial implications that potential success brings, and giving them an experience that they wouldn't get otherwise. But equally, you go, God, I haven't done a bedtime in 3 weeks. Saying, actually, is this too much of a sacrifice?
Yeah.
And where previously I didn't have that approach before I had children, because it wasn't something I even thought was possible to have for someone else, if I'm perfectly honest. But it's having children has been my biggest ever achievement, and I very, very grateful for what they do for me. So it's them.
I think that's a beautiful statement at the end of a beautiful discussion that we've had.
Well, thank you, Erica. It's been great. Yeah, it's been great. Going down memory lane and testing myself out within, being honest, with a few of the answers that I've given. But it's we're still on the journey, right?
Yeah.
It's from a business perspective, family perspective, development perspective, and I'm still learning. I mean, I still consider myself as a broken rugby player that hasn't got a clue. And as I said, I'm the least qualified person in the whole business. But luckily I'm okay at looking at spreadsheets and very good at asking stupid questions. And would like to think, especially over the last, in last year, made some correct decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds for UFIT now.
Thank you so much, Will. I'm excited to see your future, UFIT's future. And thank you for sharing so much of yourself and your own kind of perspective. And it's going to be so useful for the listeners out there as well. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Erica.
Thank you for listening today. I hope this has been a useful investment of your time. If you feel inspired by this episode, please rate it and consider subscribing. I'm keen to know how it's impacted you. Now go out there and seize those moments.